So you're going to start doing some audio work, but you're a little overwhelmed on what equipment you need to buy now and what you can wait on. There's a lot of options out there, and it's hard to know where to start. Watch this video and I'll tell you exactly what you need. The first thing you're going to need, of course, is a microphone. This is the Avantone CV12. I wouldn't recommend starting off with this one. It's pretty expensive. I think this one was $500 that I paid for it. I really like it because it has a really warm sound to it. It sounds really good for female voices especially, but even with males, it sounds really good. It brings out the nice bassy tones that you a lot of times want if you're doing, maybe some voiceover work and stuff. It's a good mic for that. A really good microphone for beginning is the Blue Yeti microphone. It'll cost you around $150 depending on where you buy it from, but it's a great beginner microphone. I would say it sounds a lot better than most other microphones in that price range, and it'll last you for quite a while. Another nice thing about it that you might find as a beginner is that it uses USB instead of XLR, which a lot of microphones do. It's pretty much the standard for microphones. The benefit of USB, of course, is you could plug it right into your computer. There's a lot of benefits to XLR that in the long run, you're going to want to get a microphone that uses XLR, but as a beginner, you'd be fine with something using USB, especially if it's the Blue Yeti microphone. It'll sound great, and if you play around with it and learn how to make your voice sound really good in post-production, you'll go pretty far with it. And going along with a microphone, the other thing you're going to need is obviously microphone accessories. First, you're going to need some sort of stand, of course. I have this one that's just... You basically have two styles of mic stands. There's this one that's just a straight pull, which this is nice for a lot of things. I like this especially because this has a nice bass on it. Obviously, that's pretty heavy, so this isn't going to move around or anything, which I like, and it's also pretty small. The other kind of bass that you'll see is a bass with legs on it that come out. I'm sure you've seen it, just kind of the tripod shape, which is just fine, but obviously it takes up more space, so your feet might be bumping into it. I have this microphone stand right here. Hopefully I don't make too much noise, and obviously this has a boom arm on it. So that's nice if you want to kind of have it coming out a little bit so that you don't have to worry about bumping into the stem of the microphone stand. So really it just comes down to personal preference, but you are going to need a stand of some sort. They're usually not expensive. You can find them for $20-30 for a decent quality one online. Another accessory you're going to need is a pop filter. And this just works to cut down the plosives in your voice. So if you have a lot of really sharp P's or S noises, those are going to cause some spikes in your recording. So this just kind of helps block them before they get to the microphone and cut down on that noise, which does make a difference in some cases. I will say it really depends on how you're recording. If you're doing like voiceover work where you're pretty close to the mic because you want to have all that bassy low end in your voice, you're probably going to want to have one of these. But if you're doing something else like recording vocals, this might not even always be necessary. It really depends on how far away from the microphone you are. If you're a good, 12 inches back from the microphone, that's probably far enough away where you're not going to have to worry about this. And also there's a lot of microphones that have like this one, the noise guard on the end of it, the foam noise guard, and that's going to help you get away with cutting down on a lot of those plosives as well. But for any close-up work for narration or voiceovers, you might want to have one of these just to be safe, and they're so cheap, it's not going to be a big deal to pick one up. This one was, I think, $8, maybe $10. So it's not going to break the bank to buy one, and then you're safe whenever you need it. And then the last accessory you're going to need is an XLR cable, and I talked about these before. Obviously, if you buy a microphone that uses USB, don't worry about this. But for most microphones, you are going to need one of these, and the end just kind of looks like that. Um, so it's a little different, but this is just what most microphones are going to use. So you're going to want to find one that's a good length for you. You don't want it to be so long that you're tripping over it in your space, but you don't want it to be so short that you're kind of hindered on how far you can go with it. So I mean, I have some of all different lengths. I have one that's 3 feet if I'm just sitting at my desk making notes into a microphone, going over a song or something. And then this one, I think this one's maybe 25 feet or something like that. This one I could pretty much, spread across my whole room if I need to. So this helps if I'm trying to find the right space in my room to record. So just find one that works for you. And again, these are pretty cheap. So, you don't have to worry about breaking the bank by buying one of these. And then the next thing you're going to need is some sort of audio interface to connect to your computer. Obviously, an XLR cable can't plug directly into a computer, so you're going to need a way to connect that and record your voice. I recommend the Scarlett line from Focusrite. They're really good, and they have audio interfaces for any budget. I think the Scarlett Solo is right around $100. It might be a little more, 110, 120, but it's right there. So this is going to be up with the microphone as another expensive thing that you're going to need, but you will use this forever. And a Scarlett is going to last you as long as you're going to need it. The only difference in the price range is how many inputs there are. So the Solo obviously has one input. And that's going to be just fine if you're just recording yourself. If you're just doing narration or making a podcast on your own, the Solo is going to be just fine. But as you move up in price, you're going to find options with more inputs. So if you're doing something with a co-host, you probably want one with 2 inputs. If you're going to record a full band, you're going to need quite a bit of inputs. And, they're just great. They're solid. I've never had any problems with it. And it does everything I could hope that it did. It's a great option that once you buy it, you'll be able to use it as long as you need to. And then the other thing you're going to need on the computer side is speakers or headphones. Studio monitors are going to be really important to hear all the detail that you need. And you're going to want to be sure that you get something that's very neutral sounding. You don't want headphones that bring out the low end or, some that don't have any bass. You're going to want to find some really good neutral monitors. A really good option are the KRK Rockets. They're pretty cheap and they're going to take you far. I use the MX Audio BX8s. Which I really like them. They have cheaper options. The BX5 I know is less. And then you can also find, I know M Audio has some other ones that are pretty good, but they actually come as a pair. And most of the time, studio monitors are sold on their own, so you will need to buy 2. But, finding ones that come as a pair is gonna be really good on your wallet. So it's a good way to start. But if you are in a place where you maybe can't have that noise all the time, or maybe you work at night when other people have gone to bed, a good pair of headphones is also going to work for you as well. When I started out, I just used some Apple EarPods to record, and they're good for what they are. For cheap pack-in headphones, they actually do have a good sound compared to a lot of other pack-in headphones. But the thing that kind of doesn't work in their favor is the fact that earbuds go into your ear and they cause a lot of ear strain. If you're sitting at your computer listening to audio for hours at a time, you are going to have some fatigue in your ears. So I would suggest getting some over-ear headphones. They're going to have a better sound quality because they're bigger, and they're also going to cause less fatigue, which is definitely nice. A good option to start off with is the Sennheiser HD280 headphones. They're going to run you about $80, but they sound really good. They've got a good neutral sound, and they're going to last you quite a while. And really, that's what you want in the beginning, is you want to find that sweet spot between budget and quality. And this really hits on that. $80 is pretty cheap for once you get into the high range of headphones. But these do kind of hit above that, I think. So they're a great option to start off with, and they'll last you a long time. You can use them for quite a while if you need to. Obviously, there's always room to move up, but it really just depends on what you're doing. If you're just recording, audiobooks, then you're not going to need that high quality. You just want a way to hear all the detail on the sound and hear those little lip sounds that you might make or the breaths that you decide you need to cut out. And these will do that job just fine. So you can use them as long as you need to. So there's something I would definitely consider if monitors don't work for you, or if you just want a second option for when you can't use your monitors. And then the last thing you're going to have to worry about is reverb and echo in your room. When you're doing high quality recordings, you're not going to want those sound waves echoing back and forth and going into that microphone that you're using. So you're going to want a way to cut down on that and make it just sound really good so people are just hearing your voice. A lot of people, when they start off, do kind of homebrew methods of cutting down these reflections by, hanging up blankets, or I've seen people create their own sound booths by using PVC pipes and putting blankets around it, which is great. It works just fine. If you're looking for something more professional, that'll just give you some more freedom instead of making a sound booth, maybe, if you do work that's more than just voiceovers, you're going to want to make sure your room sounds good and not just your vocal booth. Then you're going to want some acoustic panels. So they look like this, and you can buy them. I've seen them all over online. These are from a brand called RLX. That's a really good brand. I would say they're pretty much the industry standard. There's definitely some dispute on whether the quality is worth their higher price, but that might be something for another video. It's actually a special foam that's more dense than most other foams you might find on really cheap acoustic panels, so it's going to catch more reflections and sound waves and make sure that they don't go back into your microphone. So you're going to want to buy a whole bunch of these and put them up in different spots in your room as much as you can. The best method to do this is to find the first reflection points that sound is going to reach. So, if you're sitting at your desk and you have your microphone reflected at the opposite back wall over there, you're going to want to make sure that there's some of these to hit that point and cut down on those reflections coming back. I could see myself making another video for that because that goes into a lot of detail, but I know there's videos like that around already that you can find. So just buy a whole bunch of these. It's going to depend on how big your room is. You might need, I think they come in usually packs of 12 or 24 or 48. So I'd almost recommend just going for 48 and just having enough. I started with 24 and it did a decent job, but I would have wanted more back then. So you're going to need these, and then you're also going to need something similar called a bass trap. And that's this big guy right here. So obviously this is a lot bigger, a lot fatter. These are going to cut down the bass sounds, and obviously sound waves for bass are going to need a little bit more cushion to cut them down. So you're going to want to put these in the corners of your rooms to make sure that the bass sounds don't echo off of those corners back and forth before coming back. And these are really going to help cut down on bass to give you just a really solid noise. You just want that original bass from your voice, and that's it. You don't want any echoing bass coming back. It's really, really hard to cut down on reverb in post. It's easy to add it in if you need it, but it's hard to cut it out. So you just kind of want to make sure that you have a nice flat tone to start off with. So these are going to do a really good job to cut down on that bass and help with the acoustic panels, which are more for the treble and high-end tones. And these are going to be more expensive than the acoustic panels, but you're not going to need as many. You could get away with, I started off with 4, but again, I wish I would have had more than that. Maybe like 8. So it's going to cost you maybe as much as your acoustic panels do for that many, but since you don't need as many, it evens out. If you don't have these to begin with, you could probably get by depending on what you're doing. To start off with, if you're making podcasts at home, you could get by with some blankets, a nice carpet on the ground if you've got hardwood, and it'll sound pretty good. It'll sound good enough to get by and it'll get you started. You are going to want stuff like this if you start getting more serious in your work, so it's something to consider right now, along with everything else you have. But this is the one thing I would say you could potentially wait on if you have another way to cut down on those reflections in your room. And that's really all you need to start. It's going to cost you a few $100s to do it right, but it's going to be worth it. You're immediately going to be above a lot of other people that are beginning and don't have the right equipment they need. And that's really going to separate you from everyone else doing work in this field. It's really overloaded with people, but you need to do what you can to stand out, and getting the right equipment will make you stand out. That's not saying that you need to buy hundreds and thousands of dollars of equipment to keep up. A lot of people do that. You will do that eventually because you do get better results. But it really comes down to how well you do with what you have. You can get really good results with cheaper equipment than somebody would with high-end equipment that doesn't know how to use it. So I would suggest starting with this stuff, learn how to use it, learn what works and what doesn't, and then move up as you decide, well, this just isn't cutting it for me. And you don't have to worry about buying tons and tons of equipment and tons of things you don't need. You just need to know how to start with the basics, and that'll get you further than you think it would. So I hope this video helped you, and if you want to see more, please watch my other videos. I'll have links in the description to all the equipment I recommend, and I'll link to my website as well that's going to have a page of the best equipment to start off with as a beginner. So feel free to use that for any needs you might have, and see you again.